Welcome back to WeAreSC's Recruiting Roundup with Scott Schrader. I'm Dylan Brashier, and we're back on Monday with some more important recruiting news. Thanks so much to Bird Dogs for sponsoring this video and sending me some of their signature Bird Dogs shorts. They're designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving me a truly sculpted look. Other shorts are made of restricting, stiff cotton, but Bird Dogs fixes this using cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches to get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Order your Bird Dogs today, and they'll give you this free white tech hat with your order. And yeah, you got to go to www.birddogs.com/USC or use promo code USC at checkout. That's www.birddogs.com/USC or promo code USC at checkout for the free white tech hat with your order. They also got these fantastic polo shirts. They're very breathable, look very nice at formal events, but also very sporty and athletic. So thank you very much, Bird Dogs. Scott, you've been traveling. You were in the East Coast, then Arizona. What have you been up to?
Yeah, this last week I didn't really go to any high schools during the week last week, but I did make it to on Friday to Mater Dei versus St. Francis Academy in Baltimore. Mater Dei went back there and they played a team that it could be one of the top 5 most talented high school football programs in the country, St. Francis Academy. And you know they were 1-4 heading into this game with Mater Dei. That's because St. Francis Academy has already played St. John Bosco. They've already played one of the top teams in Florida. I think it was Shamna Madonna Prep. So anyway, their opponents every week would be the equivalent in college of going up against Alabama and Georgia every week. So St. Francis got the talent, but they also were missing like 8 or 9 players, I was told, after the game on Friday. So they got a bunch of players back from Mater Dei, and it was a close game. Well, Mater Dei struggled offensively, really couldn't get much of a run game going, and some of the offense seemed out of sync. But that Mater Dei football team defensively is as good as I've ever seen. I mean, it's really impressive. So, and one of the guys that stands out among the best of the best football program in the country in Mater Dei is Nasir Wyatt. And we had a chance to talk with him after that. We published an update recently, and he's a guy that USC is going to have to show defensively that that they've moved past last year. And we kind of touched on this topic last week, in that they probably haven't done that yet. And this game against Arizona State, which we'll talk about at the very end of this segment, was not that good. Obviously. It was actually kind of shocking at times on what ASU was able to execute on 4th downs, 3rd and 20s, and all this kind of stuff. It was just like they executed them all.
Yeah, it's like they were. I mean, we'll touch on it later, of course, but it's like they were in control of the game for majority of it, even though we were winning. They had control, which felt really weird. A really weird dynamic.
It was one of those games where it was kind of like you were just kind of like getting kind of hit, not real hard a bunch, because and then all of a sudden they would have a pass play on a 4th down
by a running back.
It's like, when is this going to end? This is, USC fans are asking, when are we going to stop seeing plays like that happen? And, we don't know. So anyway, I got to see some really good football teams. There's a class of 2025 defensive lineman, Darian Smith, who is very, very interested in USC, and he's a really, really good looking football player. So there were other guys at Mater Dei too. Jordan Davison, running back, Nate Frazier, these guys really, really good. Had rough nights. Elijah Brown has really struggled. But then you got Chuck McDonald at cornerback. He had an interception, had a big game. He had a pick 6. And you have some other guys there at Mater Dei that USC is going to be pursuing. So it was a good game. And then I got an airplane and flew out here to Arizona the next morning.
Wow. Packed 24 hours. Perfect. And then next up, Jaylen Harvey. So 6 weeks ago, he announced his top 3, and that was Penn State, Maryland, USC. He went to the San Jose State USC game with his parents, and then just recently was at the Penn State Iowa game yesterday. Scott, apparently he's going to hopefully commit sometime in October. How do we feel about it?
Yeah, Jaylen at one time had planned on being committed by now, but he took that USC visit you referred to for the opening game, San Jose State. And when they got back, the family, Jaylen and his family, decided they wanted to give the other 2 schools that were in the race, Maryland and Penn State, a last game day visit as well. So they did Maryland a week ago, and they were at the Penn State whiteout game this weekend. So, USC is feeling good about him, but you take a game in like that one,
That was
And
a great whiteout game.
right.
What was it,
So,
like 30? It was 30-0, something like that.
I think Iowa may have scored a touchdown. May have scored 7. May have scored 6. Anyway, not many, right? So so obviously that's a great atmosphere there, and Penn State's a school that he's always had a lot of interest in. Um, so we'll see. Right now USC's feeling good about him, and yes, he did. He's decided he's going to likely, more than likely, is the way he put it to me, announce in October. So there's no date, there's no when in October yet, but it would surprise me if it goes much more than a couple of weeks.
Definitely, for sure. And I to reiterate, he has a strong connection with USC. His parents love it, but I mean, of course, the distance far from home is a con for a lot of recruits. Perfect.
But there are a lot of guys from his region now at USC, and that has mattered because he's getting feedback from guys like Marshawn Lloyd and Caleb Williams. Guys that and he knows Jordan Addison as well. So these guys talk to people that are from this region now, and especially when they're on their visits. With Jaylen, took 3 of them, so the distance is there. But the one thing about DC, as long as that flight is, first of all, you don't take the flight that often, so the distance is for the families. Okay, so yes, LA is a 4-hour plus flight from Washington DC, but there's all kinds of flights. You don't have to worry about stopping anywhere. So there are a bunch of, so it's not as hard as you would think. And a lot of the road games are going to be 2-hour flights or minimum per.
Yeah.
So the Big Ten move is starting to help USC as well. So, but distance is never not a factor. So yeah, that I think in the end, if it's not USC, I think that would be the reason why you would end up at Penn State.
That makes sense. Perfect. And then moving on, for the class of 2024 O-line class, we have a few commits, and we're still looking to expand. So apparently there's a Stanford commit, Justin Tawanu, class of 2024. Scott, if you can tell us more about him.
Yeah, Justin is a guy that I actually thought was going to commit to USC in like middle of May. I thought he would eventually commit, not that he would commit in the middle of May. And he ended up taking an official visit, I think, to UCLA, and then he took an official visit to Stanford. He had one visit. He had an official visit set for USC June 16th through the 18th, but he canceled it after he took a Stanford official and ended up committing to Stanford. But USC's kept in contact with him. He's somebody that kept recruiting. He was at the USC Stanford game, which was probably not a good look for the Cardinal. But Stanford exactly is worried about him and USC, and especially the atmosphere at the Stanford game was starting to feel elite again. Like it was an elite football program with a crowd that was energized and passionate about what they're watching. So Justin Tawanu is definitely going to take an official visit to USC. We don't have a date for that yet, but it'll happen sometime in the upcoming weeks, maybe even after the season. So he's a guy for USC fans to be on the lookout for. And I can just tell you that coaching staffs are really, really, really high on Justin as an offensive tackle. So, getting somebody like him, I don't know where he is in the rankings right now. I just know based off of what I've seen and what people's opinions I value, this is a guy that's going to be really, really good in college.
Definitely. Hopefully it's something to look forward to. Perfect.
Yep.
And then next up, USC has offered a 2024 D lineman, Gabriel Reliford, out of Shreveport, Louisiana, from Evangel Christian Academy. He is the number 293 overall prospect and number 28 defensive lineman in the cycle, but he is currently committed to Texas A&M. So, Scott, if you could tell us more about him.
Yeah, he's a guy I really don't know much about. It was an offer. It wasn't somebody that USC was even that I'd heard that they were even looking at really that seriously. But you hear Evangel Christian, and longtime USC fans will think John David Booty. He led USC to several Rose Bowl victories, so that's where he was from. But yeah, this is a Texas A&M commitment. USC's been pursuing him for several years already, and I was not aware of that. So the offer, I guess, is likely to lead to an official visit, and he just sees there's some great opportunity for him out at USC. But again, these are guys. This is a guy we have ranked in the top 100 too. By the way, this is somebody that On3 considers any elite football player. So getting a guy like this, if they could add somebody like this and a Jericho Johnson, at the end of the recruiting process, that defensive line class will look really, really good.
Oh, definitely. Transitioning to the next subject, the AP poll has released their top 25, and USC slid down a few rankings. They were at 5, now they're at 8 after a win versus Arizona State. Starting at number 1, we got typical Georgia, 2, Michigan, 3, Texas, 4, Ohio State, 5, Florida State, 6, Penn State, 7, Washington, 8, USC, 9, Oregon, and 10, Utah. So you got 4 of those Pac-12 teams closing out the top 10. Scott, I want to get your initial reactions.
It was one of the things after the game, actually, even while the game was going on, I was wondering, I wonder how much USC is going to drop in their rankings.
Yeah.
And there would be reason for Florida State to have dropped in the rankings. There's an argument that we could make either way, that USC shouldn't have dropped, and then make an argument that they should drop. The bottom line is, I look at the rankings right now, whether USC is ranked 8th or 4th or even 1st for that matter, if you take care of business and you win football games, the ranking's not going to ultimately matter. But USC is, if they don't look good in their victories through the next couple of weeks, 3 weeks, they've got Colorado this week. They're favored by 24. So, they need to look good in that win. Then they got Arizona at home, and they definitely, need to win that game big. So if they struggle like they did yesterday in those games, I don't think there's much more droppage, but, USC, if they didn't drop this game, but they had a bad game next week, they would drop. Yet you don't find the Florida States and these other programs really the drop after these kind of close wins. I mean, everybody's acting like USC lost yesterday on our message board.
Exactly.
So I look at it and I look and I said, looks fine to me.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I do agree with you that at the end of the day, the polls do not matter. I mean, until we get to the college football playoff polls, but to have us drop 3 spots after a double-digit win, I felt like it was kind of nitpicky to drop us down that far.
It probably was. And the thing is that it's a beauty contest, and so Arizona State plays Fresno State a week ago, right? And they don't score a single point. So everybody's going, oh, God, USC just gave up 28 points to a team. But this is something we'll talk about later again, too. But, you can't look at games that way, because teams are going to play. Even Georgia gave up 21 points to the University of Alabama, Birmingham.
Exactly.
Okay. They had 3 or 4 turnovers, Georgia, though. But that's kind of like what USC was doing yesterday. I almost look at those like 4th and 20 or 3rd and 20 or whatever the situation. That's almost like a turnover to me.
Yeah.
USC giving up the conversion on those. And it just was like happening over and over again. We've already talked about this, and now I'm on a rant on that topic. But anyway.
And then not to mention that Arizona State offense was like a completely different offense than what we've seen the entire season. I mean, Rashada was the starter until they put in Drew Pine. But
here's what happened: is Arizona State lost their top 2 quarterbacks, so they didn't practice all week with the quarterback they used last week. So they had the entire week this week knowing that it was going to be Drew Pine, and they practiced together, and they knew who their quarterback was going to be. Now, what is that worth 28 points against USC? It's obviously not, but it certainly matters, significantly.
Yeah. So I mean, bottom line, it doesn't really matter where USC is ranked. If we get business done on the field, we're going to be top 4 by the end of the season for sure. Especially if we have those wins over Washington, Oregon, Utah, which are all top 10 teams right now. So, but yeah, USC versus Arizona State recap. Scott, you were there. What were the sights and sounds?
Well, I'll tell you what what was fun about last night was that there was a packed house.
Oh, yeah.
And when there's a packed house at Arizona State, it's loud. There is a lot of energy. And those fans keep that energy from start to finish, and a lot like Oregon does. They just haven't had a whole lot to cheer about past the first quarter that Arizona State is the problem. But they did last night. It was also cool seeing Bryce Butler and Devon Kennard and some former players were out there, Sue Craven. It's good to see those guys, on the road, seeing them at road games. Kind of gives you a feel of where the program's going and how these guys are viewing it. But I just thought the entire game, it just looked like something was off, offensively and defensively. I could go on another rant about giving up the 3rd and 4th down conversions, and running backs completing passes, and them almost completing another pass that that would have been a touchdown.
Yeah.
And so, but historically, USC has laid an egg on their first Pac-12 road game almost every year.
We saw it at Oregon State last year.
Yeah, and when during the Pete Carroll years, every year they would have that first road game, whether it was Arizona State, Arizona, Oregon State, didn't matter. USC struggled. And there's stuff that goes on. The crowd noise obviously rattled USC. It was the first time they had to deal with that kind of stuff early in the game. They have all kinds of USC was penalized several times.
Oh, yeah.
Had to waste timeouts. So it just looked like something was off. But I think that every football team in the country is going to have at least 1 week like USC had here.
I'm not entirely mad at the defense because those trick plays are really hard to cover, especially when you have running backs completing passes and to their quarterback. And it was just everyone was doing everything. And from me and my friends were like, what is happening right now? And they were getting kind of mad, like, oh, why are they doing this? And I'm like, oh, it's kind of smart. I mean, they know they can't win outright. So they have to compensate in other ways, and they were doing a heck of a job with their game planning and scheming against us. That was a great coaching job by what was his name, Dillingham
Kennedy. Yeah, it was a game too where you look at some of the stuff too. If USC doesn't play as undisciplined and have Zach Branch fumbling the kickoff, and then ASU basically had to go 17 yards for that touchdown. The Bear Alexander roughing the passer. The next play, Arizona State scores a touchdown. Do they score that touchdown? If they don't get that penalty, probably not. And you look at that Mason Cobb interception that didn't happen, and ASU goes on to score after that.
Yep.
If USC just kind of tightens things up a little bit in that regard, they score. ASU scores 11 points last night, and USC fans aren't quite up in arms. It still would have been a lot of yards that they would have probably been looking at, but overall, it would have looked a whole lot different. But USC needs to capitalize on those opportunities when those balls are coming right to your hand. You extend the drive for these teams, whether it's that way or an offsides or a personal foul penalty. It doesn't really matter. You can't give any of these teams extra chances, and USC did that often last night.
Yeah, there, like you said, a lot of missed opportunities, sloppy ball handling, and so many penalties in the first quarter. There was 6 in the first quarter. I mean, mainly with the O linemen and the false starts and the holdings, but it was just such a sloppy game. But
if you're going to play it that sloppy, because that is, I mean, it's almost laughable to talk about the offense that scored 42 points.
Exactly.
But,
even in the
but the offense didn't look good. But it didn't look good from my perspective on the field. It looked very like everything looked hard last night for USC. Is even having Caleb having to do the normal scrambling around and then heave the pass to not heave it, but they threw some beautiful passes to Brendan Rice and Todd Washington and so on. But it's the offense the week before the game previous to last night. The offense looked a lot different. Even the play calling was a lot different. And I agree with you. If USC would have they averaged 11 yards a carry running the ball. I think if you go to Colorado, you probably, based off what I saw, Colorado, Oregon, my goodness, Colorado can't stop the run even when they know it's coming.
We're putting up 200 yards on the ground.
So, and USC's got the O-line and the running backs to do it. Absolutely. I mean, Marshawn Lloyd, he's a top 5 running back in the country. I don't care what anybody says. Give me Marshawn Lloyd, and I am really, really happy as an OC.
Definitely. And speaking of Colorado in the run game, we're going to transition into our next opponent, and that's USC at Colorado, waking up at 9 a.m. On Fox. What is that? The big kickoff, or what is it called?
The big noon kickoff?
Big noon kickoff, yeah, but we're on the West Coast, so that's 9 a.m. for us. The line is set at 23 in USC's favor.
I did a parlay this past week, and I almost won. It's like a 7-game parlay. I'm the only idiot that does 7-game parlays, probably. But I narrowly missed on this. And I actually picked USC not to cover against Arizona State, but I think USC will cover at Colorado. I don't think you're going to have 2 games offensively like USC had in a row like they had at ASU. And I do think defensively, I would expect USC to play far better as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to cover. I think we're going to have a lot of the same struggles that we did against Arizona State and that hostile environment. I mean, I feel like Colorado's going to be even worse because they're angry after last week. We're still going to win by a fair margin, maybe not 23, but I think 14-15 is safe to say. And especially if we can get that run game going with Marshawn Lloyd and Austin Jones, they're going to have a long day on the run game for sure.
All right, we'll revisit this next week.
Yeah, but that 9 a.m., that's kind of rough for Saturday, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I'm actually okay with it. I'll be at the game, so it'll
Oh,
be 10 a.m. And it's different, but at the same time, after this week and getting on my way home at 1 a.m. this morning,
that's true.
I'll be happy that the game will be
Yeah,
over by like 2 p.m.
for sure. Perfect. And then we'll move on to another game. That's Utah, Oregon State. It's at Oregon State, and the line is at 2 in favor of Oregon State.
Yeah, I'm going to take Oregon State.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Utah and UCLA were just throwing ducks yesterday. It was not a great game to watch, in my opinion, but Utah is clearly not the team that we thought. They have a solid defense, but offensive production is poor. So definitely Oregon State's going to capitalize.
Yeah, I mean, if that game was at Utah, I probably would flip it. But Oregon State is another tough place to play with the crowd, and I just think that obviously they lost to Washington State, and that was a tough loss for Oregon State, but they'll be able to put some points on the board, and I just think it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough for Utah on the road at that game.
Definitely. But let's talk about how good Washington State looks. That was a great performance offensively and defensively. Kind of let it come back there at the end, but still, offensively, Cam Ward is the real deal from what we've seen.
Yeah, I didn't get to see that game. I was already at the stadium yesterday at ASU, but I was following the game score and just kind of checking highlights the entire day, and I was just like, wow, that's a big win for that program. And it's just you sit there, and it's probably one of the best games yesterday.
Period.
Out of any of the games, right? And Oregon State.
A lot of the ranked matchups were really underwhelming, and that one
they were
really gave it to us.
So that was a really good game, and probably nobody watched it. And these are two programs that don't even have a conference yet for next year.
Yeah, and I saw a stat. It was the first time that they meet that both teams are ranked in 108 meetings.
Really?
Yeah,
that's a pretty good stat right there. Yeah.
Now it's their last one, but we'll see.
Pac-12 strong. That's all I gotta say.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay, well that will conclude another edition of WeAreSC's Recruiting Roundup with Scott Schrader. We'll see you next week. Fight on.